r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. When I was 10, I murdered an entire family of baby bunnies because of a lie my parents told me. What's the worst thing you've done because somebody lied? When I learned the truth about Santa, I wasn't mad that he wasn't real. I was so mad because my parents, friends, family, etc. were intentionally lying to me. I was so pissed. I told everyone in my 3rd grade class I wasn't going to lie to my friends like my good-for-nothing parents would. Lots of 8-year-old Christmases were ruined that year. In retrospect, every parent tells lies, mostly of the little and white variety. When I asked my dad, a theologian, mind you, if Santa was real, and he said, Santa isn't one person. He is many people. No, I don't mean those Santas in the malls that people take pictures with. I mean that Santa is more than a person. He's a spirit of love and giving. He is a symbol, a shared idea that moves people to be better than they are and love others like they deserve to be loved. Of course, I was about 6 when he said this, so I'm paraphrasing, but I still remember those being his main points. Santa equals Batman. When I was 16, I was walking to my buddy's house and saw a fawn, baby deer, in the ditch with what appeared to be a broken leg. Being the wannabe heroic type, I raced to my friends and called the SPCA, thinking they could help. With the obligatory "or the woman on the other end told me to phone the non-emergency line for the police. Thinking that this is a good idea, I obliged. Confident help would arrive. I waited for an hour and a half with the deer constantly telling it to sit tight and help is coming. When the officer did arrive, he parked across the street, asked if the deer was still alive. I replied yep, happy that help had come. He proceeded to walk across the road, loading his shotgun, said, thanks for the call. You can go now, and blow his head off. All I can think about is that Napoleon Dynamite scene where the farmer shoots the cow in front of the little kids. What the duck? Deer aren't like horses. They can survive a broken leg. Reminds me of when I brought a squirrel with a broken leg to the RSPCA. Told this before, but it's relevant. Turned out it's illegal to release a grey squirrel in the UK once you've rescued one. So they told me they were just going to put it down after they'd taken it away. If they'd told me while it was still in front of me, I would have picked it up and marched straight to an independent wildlife sanctuary. To a private vet if I'd had to. 90% of these posts have absolutely nothing to do with lies, and almost everything to do with killing small, adorable animals. I feel depressed now. Thanks for the warning. This has turned into an entire thread about people killing small adorable animals. There's probably already a subreddit for this type of thing too. Please don't feel bad about this. I was in a similar situation as a young adult. Our dog also dragged some baby bunnies away from their nest and we found 3 of them hurt and helpless. We called around, but there were no shelters who would take them. We were advised by someone who had worked with wild animals at one of the shelters to smear them with some of the mud from the backyard to hide the scent and leave them in some close cover, thick bushes, so the mother would hear their cries and return to them. For a long time I lived with the sick feeling that even though it would have broken my heart to do so, I should have given the mercy kill. But it was too difficult for me to do. So I left them in the bushes. Long after we found their skeletons, and so I realized that they had died there, suffering. After all. And I've never fully gotten over this. You did one of the bravest things you could have. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. You're a good person. Many pet owners, especially those with small animals, will eventually be faced with the reality of the mercy kill if they cannot get the animal to a vet to stop the suffering. No child should ever have to make that choice. My heart goes out to you. Some large animal owners have to mercy kill too. Unfortunately, my grandpa's dog once crawled under his truck and didn't get out of the way before my grandpa backed up. He had to shoot him with a .45. It takes a lot of guts and emotion to put down your dog like that. Edit. A Z is not a proper period. Holy shit. Your grandpa has some major balls. When I was 10, I murdered an entire family of baby bunnies. Oh okay. You seriously freaked me out for a second. I was at first okay, then what the duck? Hello Petter. My parents had just taught me how to use our riding mower so I could mow the lawn for them. The first time I mowed the backyard I saw a bunch of baby bunnies about 2 feet in front of me in the grass. I couldn't stop. The sound was awful. Similar horrible story. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was stepping out of my car and felt something underfoot. I didn't think much of it. Maybe a rock or a twig. So I put my weight down, pivot my foot as I step out of the car, and when I step away and look back, there's a sparrow trying to fly away, with its neck twisted and a wing broken. I'd imagine the sound was just as terrible. We were fishing at a local pond, and my younger brother casts his line from the side instead of over his shoulder. We were fishing on the bottom, so we had some heavier anchors on our lines. Well, right as he casts off, this duck waddles out from behind him and catches the anchor in the upper neck. He flopped around with a broken neck for a good minute or so, flailing into the water and then finally being still with one wing and his head underwater. The saddest part? All of the other ducks nearby swam over and kept poking at it trying to wake it up. Oof. This topic hurts. My family had just moved. My cousin and I found some kittens under the house. We had heard cats always land on their feet, so we each picked one up and proceeded to repeatedly launch them in the air. They both died. We were around 5 years old. Duck. I'm 27 and still feel sick when I think about it. This whole thread is like of mice and men but with kids. I can still tend the rabbits. George. I didn't mean no harm. George. I stopped masturbating because some a-hole told me I'd go blind. Sure you did. Sent from my Braille phone 5. Don't feel bad. I hit a deer on my way home from work and when I got out of my car, bawling like a beach. By the way, I saw that it was still twitching and smashed its head in with a big rock. I live in the boonies and knew the police would be too slow to arrive to put it out of its misery. Oh. I need an r/aww palate cleanser now. As much as it sucks, getting that close to a wounded deer is pretty dangerous. The hooves are pretty sharp and if it lashes out it can gore you pretty bad. That's not a lie. It's a misunderstanding. Came in to say that. I've heard lots of people say this. It's a common belief. I'm sure the ops parents believe it. I traded a kid my Mewtwo holographic card for a magma card because it was stronger. I was a kid at the time. Instead he gave me a shitty Growlithe and a Squirtle. And I already had a Growlithe. I hope that guy is dead. I know the feels. I traded a holographic Zapdos for a Ninetales because my friend convinced me that Ninetales looked badass. Similar situation. Except I traded my promo Pikachu, my first card ever that I got at my first movie I'd ever seen at a theater, Pokemon the first movie, for an ugly ass Beedrill. Both my brother and a few of his friends pressured me into the trade. I'm still bitter about it 12 years later. Edit. Interesting. My cake day. What happens now? My mom told me that elephants live in your ears and the wax is their poo. Me being stupid I get a popcorn kernel and put it in my ear. It got stuck and I had it removed with water. Wait. How are those connected? Elephants are notoriously and deathly allergic to popcorn. When I was about 10 my mom warned me that having an uneven number of friends means someone will feel left out. There were 5 of us in the group. So I called a council meeting and we voted someone out. Unanimously. Looking back I see how awful it was. But that girl is one of my closest friends now so I'm hoping there wasn't any lasting emotional damage. Maybe she is just waiting for the opportune moments to vote me out of her life. I broke up with an amazing girl in grade 7 because everyone told me they saw her hugging another boy. I broke up with her. She cried. A few years later, we were talking, and she said she remembered everything that day. The boy she hugged was her brother from another school, who was camping for the past 3 weeks. I still liked this girl. Always have. I just always thought she was cheating on me. Now we're close friends. I have a girlfriend. She has a boyfriend. But there's always that what if. Possible scenario is that you'd find an incompatibility with being so close together and at grade 7. It could have turned out that you hated each other and you might not be friends today. Just throwing that out there. This post has officially made me incredibly grateful to have a dog who is too slow, lazy, feeble, and lacking in pride drive to ever kill anything. I used to live in Miami. When I was around 5. It was a really hot day. So I thought my fish were hot. You know how fish do when they open and close their mouth. So I got them all and put them in the freezer. Around 15 tiny little fish. My family still reminds me. I still feel bad new parents didn't lie to me. I was just in the arm situation as you thinking I could help an animal. Similar story. A kid I went to high school with put his hamster in the microwave because he thought it was cold. I also slaughtered all of our fish. I love them. Fed them every day. And I was almost certain they were like my puppy. So when I was watching cartoons one afternoon, I decided they might want to watch it with me. So I placed them in rows on my mom's bed. Watched them flop around. Finished my cartoon. And left them there. My mom was very freaked out at the rows of dead fish on her bed when she went to go to sleep that night. I used to chase rabbits. Obviously I'd never catch them. I just liked trying to do something. Well, I was running around the front yard and chasing some bunny and a car sped past. I don't chase after bunnies anymore. On foot. Motorized vehicles are the way to go. Those poor passengers didn't survive the collision. Did they? Reddit. What are your stories of killing cute animals at a young age that we can compile into a disturbingly long list? My family has some distant Manchu ancestry going way back. When I was like 6 I was asking about Manchuria. And my mum told me that we were related to the X clan. Which was like the equivalent of a nobility type back when the man ruled China. Anyway. I guess she thought this would amuse me or make me feel special or whatever and I'd quickly forget about it. But I didn't. I went on to tell almost everyone this cool piece of trivia about my family. Only to finally be informed at the age of 17 by a Chinese exchange student that this was impossible because everyone in that family line was famously assassinated. Like many centuries ago. The sad thing is that people still bring this up and I have to confess that it was never true and my whole life was a lie. TL. Our mother made up a cute story about how we're related to ancient Chinese nobility. I accidentally told everyone. Edit. Reading back over yours. My story is definitely not the worst ever. But it sure embarrassed me for ages. This isn't something that happened because someone lied. But it is a story about viciously slaughtering innocent creatures. When I was a kid, I loved weird animals. Bugs. Worms. That kind of thing. I mean, I used to keep them as pets. Thought they were just incredible. I'd spend hours tracing ants back to their nest and just watching them. Loved when it rained and all the worms came out at our school. Of course. All the others stomped on them. Which just killed me. To this day. I do my best not to kill flies or spiders unless I absolutely can't get them out by other means. Last month. There was a cricket hiding in a crack of our patio. A real loud mother ducker. Right outside my window. And it was driving me nuts. I tried for days to catch that thing alive. I'm 30. I'm lying down outside. Waiting for the crickets to show its head. After a few days. I couldn't take it anymore and I sprayed it with Raid. Felt like shit. Anyways. To the story. When I was about 10. We had snails everywhere in our backyard. They weren't hurting anything. We didn't have a garden or anything. And the plants they were living on grew like weeds. One day. I gathered 20. Maybe 30 of them. I decided I would race them. From one crack on the sidewalk to the next. Spent a long time getting them all set up. And they were off. Sort of. Had to prod them a little. Keep them from going off track. But it was actually happening. My little brother. 3 lost Matasona plate came out then. He was 7. He did not share my fascination with creepy crawlies. The race was cancelled on account of shoes. I saved a few. But many were lost that day. I can never forget the crunching sounds my brother's kids made. I think I cried. Can't remember now. But I definitely felt like crying. I did something incredibly stupid when I was somewhere in 3rd, 5th grade. I found a tiny speckled egg-shaped thing. And I was pretty sure it was some sort of bird egg. I thought it was hummingbird. But my friend kept saying it was a rock. What was the one way I thought would prove him wrong? Chuck it at the ground. Splat. Or, come on. Why did it have to be baby bunnies? Colon. Open bracket. Come one. Come all. My neighbor and I, when we were really little, pulled a baby bird out of a bird's nest and were looking at it and playing with it. My neighbor's grandpa told us the same thing. The mother wouldn't take it back. So we decided we would take care of it. We tried feeding it worms and did everything we could to get it to be friendly. But after a few hours we ended up feeding it to our dog. We got a long talking to from her grandpa. I still feel awful. If it's any consolation, you probably did the right thing. Your dog may have injured them. You may not have been able to find the warren. Anything could have happened. Anyway, my mum managed to convince me that our backyard wasn't big enough for a dog. In reality, she just didn't want to have to deal with a dog and 3 young kids. Years later, we moved to another, larger house that had a much smaller backyard. I was a little older, and so was able to get a dog. In this smaller yard, I remember I was about 7 and this gorgeous mongrel dog followed me home. He was really friendly, and seemed to follow simple commands, but had no collar, had matted fur and was skinny as all buggery, obviously didn't belong to anyone. Mum drove it to the RSPCA to be adopted. I honestly don't know if anyone got this dog, but I was pissed off at my mum for years over that one. Where do I start? My parents are Jehovah's Witnesses, so it's hard to pick one lie that made me do stupid things. Okay, I'll talk. In 3rd grade, I cheated on my history exam. In 4th grade, I stole my Uncle Max's toupee and I glued it on my face when I was Moses in my Hebrew school play. In 5th grade, I knocked my sister Edie down the stairs and I blamed it on the dog. When my mom sent me to the summer camp for fat kids and then they served lunch, I got nuts and I pigged out and they kicked me out. But the worst thing I ever done, I mixed a pot of fake puke at home and then I went to this movie theater. Hid the puke in my jacket. Climbed up to the balcony and then I made a noise like this. Hua 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 hua. And then I dumped it over the side. All over the people in the audience. And then. This was horrible. All the people started getting sick and throwing up all over each other. I never felt so bad in my entire life. Always upvote Goonies. I'll make this short. A friend came over one day after school. We were maybe 8 at the time. While my parents were making dinner, we decided that we wanted to pet the fish. Grabbing them and petting them. They all died. All 10 of them. We had funerals at the toilet. RIP fishes. Alternatively, I told my mom that I thought I had a fat butt and thigh when I was 9 or so. My mom told me to never think like that or it could kill me. I realize now she was talking about anorexia, but I still have never had a poor self-body image. This post ducked me up big time. When I was 8, I had a pet chicken. The little guy was only 2 or 3 weeks old. His name was Chicken and I loved him. One night, I didn't know what to feed him, so I asked my babysitter, Spanish lady, what to feed him. She didn't know, so we ended up feeding him rice and fish food. The next day he couldn't walk or stand and I didn't know what was happening, so I sat in my bed and cried for him to forgive me. My mom came home that night and sat with us and he was on the table. Just sitting there. Suddenly, he started spazzing. Like he couldn't control his body. Little wings flapping and cheeping really loudly. I couldn't take it and ran out as soon as it started. I don't think there's any pain worse than watching someone or something you love die slowly. TLDR, I killed my chicken with fish food. I'm an Iraq veteran. So, that. Hey. I have a story that's actually about doing something stupid because of a lie. And it has nothing to do with animals or death. Anyway, the setting. I am 5 or 6 years old. Going to the store with my dad. And I see one of those little vending machines where you can get loose candy for a couple of quarters. This one machine had what looked like big gumballs or jawbreakers. I had never had a jawbreaker. But I knew they lasted a long time and that you weren't supposed to bite down on them. So I asked my dad, "Are those jawbreakers? Can I have one?" He said that they were indeed jawbreakers and got one for me. Gleefully, I popped it into my mouth and waited for the sugary goodness to sink in. After a few moments, it still didn't taste like anything. I told this to my dad, and he said to just wait. So I waited for hours with this thing in my mouth that still didn't taste like anything. I was a very patient child. By that evening, though, I had had enough and declared that I was going to try biting it. My dad says, "Okay, go ahead." Cautiously, slowly, I put it between my teeth and began to bite down, half expecting something horrible to happen because it is called a jawbreaker after all. But instead of splitting sharply like candy, it began to give a little, almost rubbery in texture. It crumbled into 2 pieces which I spat out into my hand. It was then that I realized it was a ducking bouncy ball. TLDR. I sucked on a rubber bouncy ball all day because my dad is a trolling of shat. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.